This is Partners in Crime with Adam Croft and...
Not the other one. Hello, welcome to another episode of Partners in Crime, episode 166. And although Bob is away, I do have a friend. Hello, Mr. Graham Bartlett, joining us on this episode. Hello.
Hi, Adam. Thanks. It's always great to stand in for Bob.
Yes, well, somebody has to, don't they?
Well, you know.
While he's off gallivanting around the world doing his filming and various bits and bobs. Now you're joining us not just because you've got a book out, but because you're a very nice and helpful chap as well. But we'll get onto the book in a little while. We've got some bump to get through first. Yeah. Mainly the free book of the month for our patrons. Free book of the month for June is Where the Bodies Are Buried by A.S. French, which was released in February. It's a standalone crime thriller, usually $3.99 on ebook, but is yours absolutely free if you're a Partners in Crime patron. The discount code should be in your dashboard now, and if you're not a patron, then you damn well should be, because you get to watch every episode in full HD video. You get access to an extra bonus episode each week, Partners in Crime, Arsenic and Old Lace, shout out on the show, and of course that free book of the month every single month. The link is in the show notes, or you can check out patreon.com/Partners in Crime podcast. Now, Mr. Bartlett, I was away last week, sunning myself in Corfu, and one of the things I was doing was reading this little number here. Ooh. Your book. It's the preview version, if anyone is watching on the video.
Got a nicer cover than that now. Look.
Oh, look at that. Hardback. Yeah, hardback.
Pink and black. All the rage.
How's it all going? The build up to Bad for Good. It's out this month, isn't it? I'm going to check the date on here now. It doesn't actually say. Is it about the
23rd of June?
23rd. What a
just over 2 weeks' time. Very, very exciting. I mean, it's been an amazing experience, really. I mean, I've had 2 previous non-fictions out, which I wrote with a chap by the name of Peter James, who
never heard of him.
Some of you might have. Yeah, I mean, he's quite niche, but but you know, this has been incredible because it's my debut novel, and you know, working with a new agent and new publishers and new publicist has been an absolute joy. I mean, they've put everything behind it. The build-up, as you know, I'm sure anyone who's listening to this or watching this knows that they're a writer, can be very, very slow, and you think, oh, is anything happening? And you know, I come from a profession where, you know, everything happens like yesterday or, you know, immediately. But this is really, really slow, but so measured and so strategic, and you know, things are starting to really pick up now, and particularly around the reviews and the you know, the pre-publication sort of commentary on it. It's been fabulous. I'm having the time of my life.
Yeah, publishers always claim they're doing things in the background. There is stuff going on. There is stuff going on. We are doing things. We're not just having lunch at the Ivy. But we're going to. For people who don't know, tell us a little bit about your background and why it's actually so interesting having you on the show this week.
So I was a police officer for 30 years. I worked in Sussex Police for all of that time, predominantly in Brighton and Hove, which for those of you that don't know, I mean, Brighton and Hove is on the south coast, about 50 miles from London, sometimes called the capital by the sea. It's an incredibly cosmopolitan, vibrant city. It has some of the richest people and some of the poorest people in the country living there. It has its own challenges, very politically active, so lots of protests, lots of kind of demonstrations. It has a nighttime economy that can be really tricky to deal with, pubs and clubs and its sporting events. And no 2 hours are the same in Brighton and Hove. And I worked as a detective for most of my career there. My last 4 years, I was the what they call the divisional commander. So I was in charge of all of the policing in Brighton and Hove. And so I kind of describe that as, if it goes wrong in Brighton and Hove, it's probably my fault ultimately.
So you know a thing or two about crime in Brighton then? Pretty well qualified to write this novel.
Well, I'd hope so. And it's I've written Bad for Good from the perspective of the person doing the role that I used to do, because we often hear about detective sergeants, detective chief inspectors, but my lead character, Jo Howe, who is a woman, which was a challenge in itself getting that right, is the divisional commander. So she is in charge of everything that's going on in Brighton, and of course it's all falling down around her ears. The premise of the book is that what happens when police cuts are so severe that vigilantism takes over, piling on that corruption, blackmail, mass murder, and the murder of her predecessor's son, and that's the challenge that she finds herself in. So it tells it through that lens, and I don't know of any other crime fiction that has told it through that level of seniority. Quite often, senior officers are portrayed as being sort of just out for themselves, career hungry, blockages, and it's actually far from the truth. So this is quite unique in that regard, I hope.
Excellent. Well, we're going to talk a little bit more later about links between real life policing and your fictional policing in your book. But it's quite interesting, actually, when we're talking about Brighton and the challenges that poses. I was reading an article on CrimeReads.com this week about crime novels with a strong sense of place and inimitable atmosphere. I'm pretty sure Brighton is covered by those words. But the article was written by Matt Goldman, and he's recommended actually a few books which have sense of place as essentially a character in the book, similar to what I try to do with my Rutland books, I suppose, although I'm not putting them anywhere near the same category as these. He's recommended S.A. Cosby's Blacktop Wasteland and Razorblade Tears, set in rural Virginia, where Cosby introduces his reader to a place that's far different from Virginia's cities, a place fertile for strong family bonds, lawlessness and redemption, it says here, where the past is never far away and blood is thicker than fried okra. And that's a sentence that should be enough to get you reading. They've also recommended Donna Tartt's Secret History. Apparently, according to Matt Goldman, all three of her books are crime fiction from page 1. Discuss. Set in Vermont, this book, Donna Tartt captures how impossibly green a place is in the spring, especially for someone coming from dusty California. How stunning the leaves are in autumn and how brutal the cold is in winter. Another thing she captures so well, it says here, is the underlying tension between locals and visitors. Ace Atkins' Quinn Coulson series. Quinn Coulson's a former Army Ranger who returns to his home in northern Mississippi, where the rural South provides ample opportunity for new to tangle with old, for corrupt to bump against good deeds, for the woods, lakes and streams to shelter all sorts of lawlessness and stack the odds against Quinn. Rachel Housel Hall's Lou Norton series, set in Los Angeles, a native Angelino writing this series, where Los Angeles is portrayed as what it is, more of a collection of small cities than one big one, and small cities that are difficult to get from one to the other. And the list is rounded off with William Kent Kruger's Cork O'Connor series, set in northern Minnesota near the Boundary Waters Canoe area, one of the best kept secrets in the United States. The article says, if you like millions of acres of unspoiled nature, where the character Cork navigates the inherent conflicts between Native Americans and white America. Cork himself is part Anishinaabe, let's go with that, on his mother's side, and in a way that makes him uniquely qualified as a sheriff. And in Minnesota, it says the seasons are short, pronounced and intense, and William Kent Kruger uses these changes not only as an element for crime, but as character itself. So how's that for a little segue into talking about place as a character and a sense of place in books? By the way, if you like the sound of any of the books we talk about on today's show, you might want to go and grab a copy from Kobo, because Partners in Crime is very gratefully sponsored by Kobo, one of the world's largest ebook retailers. And as a listener, you can get 90% off of your first ebook purchase from Kobo using the promo code CRIME22. That's CRIME22 at the checkout. And if you've used that, then you can follow the link in the show notes, because on some eligible titles you can get up to 40% off using the promo code Partners22, and you can use that as many times as you like, which is wonderful. Graham, back to your new book and your history from real life crime fighting to inventing fictional crime. How much real life experience is in the book? I know you said you'd set it from the point of view of a character who essentially does the role that you used to do, or has the level of seniority that you had. How much of the real life experience that you had is actually in that book? Is it over dramatized for the reader for fictional purposes, or can it really be like that? Because I mean, I've read it, and it's dramatic, to say the least.
It's a work of fiction, and we'll always say that when the lawyers come running, it's a work of fiction. No, it is a work of fiction, and everything, all of the events, incidents, crimes, etc., that happen in the book are from my own imagination. But the world that I've created, particularly the policing world, is very much influenced by what I experienced over the years, and I'm not just talking about kind of how the police go about investigating the particular crimes, or how they respond to the various challenges that occur in the book, but the relationships, the people that we kind of get to know deeper, the ones that we go home with, the 3 or 4 that we, that I want readers to really kind of engage with. That's all influenced from what I experience, what I know, and some of the scenes were great fun to write, particularly the ones where there's kind of just those little subtle bits of banter going on that you just kind of think, oh yeah, I remember that, and I don't kind of include a lot of gallows humor in there, but there is lightheartedness, there is the sort of areas that you might not think. So at one point there, Jo Howe, the protagonist, she wants to get all of her team into a briefing an early briefing. They're all tired, they're all kind of busy, and if she knows that they would all make excuses to get in, but she needed to get them all in one place to talk about the way where the case was going. So she did what I used to do, and you just go out and buy bacon sandwiches for everyone, and that has them sort of swarming like bees to a honeypot. They're literally, you can't keep them away. And then so it's that kind of world that's very much reality from my own. In fact, I had to, when I first wrote it, the first draft, one of the feedback I had from my agent was that you've got to cut the characters down, because it was almost too realistic in terms of just the volume of police officers, the huge size of the cast. So I've had to kind of make some compromises and double hatting some of the people, but certainly the world of the characters and how they would respond is exactly as I experienced, and I would imagine it to happen should the carnage that I've created befall Brighton and Hove Police today.
Mostly bribing each other with food.
It's a very, very vibrant currency now.
It's as simple as that sometimes, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Well, we will talk a little bit more about the book and some real life aspects of policing, real life challenges that are going on at the moment that have been in the news here in the UK. But you've also been working as an advisor on some TV series and programs, and also to crime fiction authors such as myself, in helping us get our books to be more accurate from a policing point of view. Does it annoy you sometimes watching other TV series, or are there ones you've been watching which you think actually they've got that right and they've managed to balance the tension and the drama with what happens in reality?
Yeah, I think you've used exactly the right word there. It's a balance. If people want to watch or read how policing is in reality, then they're going to watch a documentary or read a textbook, which is a completely different audience. But the people that I help, such as you and Bob and others, you're writing crime fiction. You're writing something that you want the reader to be engaged by, gripped by. You want people to fly through. So you really don't want to have that kind of that turgid reality that policing can be. So it is a balance, and same with TV, and with TV, obviously it's very visual, so you have to cater for that too. Some of the best TV series that I watch, include Happy Valley, and there's a new series being made round about now, I think, which Bob Bridgestock, who I know has been on the programme before, advises on. Grace, obviously, is very very realistic in terms of the policing, but then I think that reflects Peter James's novels for sure, but also he's an exec producer on that as well, so he has an element of control over that, and because it's very important to his brand to have as authentic as possible. There was that harrowing, some of the docudramas like Four Lives, harrowing Sheridan Smith drama about the Stephen Port murders, and the Pembrokeshire murders was another docudrama, all absolutely absolutely on the button really in terms of their authenticity. But there are, you do have to accept that TV writers and authors will play not fast and loose so much, but they will need to take creative decisions around the reality. And I completely get that. I really do, and I think it's one of those things that, as an advisor, I have to remember that I'm not the one making the TV program. I'm not the one writing the book, unless I'm writing the book. But if I can give the person who is as much information about how things really are, and then help them work out which 90% of that to cut and which 10% actually drives the story forward, then I think I'm adding value on that.
And are you able to suspend that that side of you that's saying things wouldn't really be like that when you're watching crime dramas on TV? If they're not realistic, does that genuinely ruin it for you, or are you able to kind of switch off that side and watch as a viewer?
It depends how good the story is, really. I'm not a big fan of. There's one particular very, very high profile and very successful BBC police procedural that I'm not a great fan of, because even though the story is very good, and millions of viewers tune into it every series, the mistakes are unnecessary, I think, and I think so. If it's a good story, and there's a little bit of maybe naivety as opposed to sort of blatant ignoring the procedure, but maybe for example, this is an example that comes up all the time, where you have an interview scene and you have a detective chief inspector sat in the interviewing the suspect. That never happens. Never happens. But if the story is good enough, it's good, and I'm engaged with the characters, and then I can kind of put that to one side and go, okay, well, that's so be it. What really gets me is where it's quite clear that the author or the writer, the TV writer or producers haven't sought advice. And it doesn't mean from me. I mean, there's other people like me out there, but haven't sought advice, because you can tell where they just haven't tried. And whether that's a nervousness that they think the advisor is going to kind of trash the whole project or trash the whole book, I don't know. But any advisor worth their salt will work with the story, with the characters, to try and make it as authentic as possible. I try to talk about authentic and credible crime fiction rather than realistic crime fiction, because reality can be dull. But any advisor worth their salt will go with the flow of the story and find ways to create authenticity without damaging the whole narrative.
Well, one of the things that you've put in your new book is essentially focus on how staffing levels and cuts to policing are causing issues and have real dramatic knock-on effects for the general public, for the police themselves, for lots of different walks of life. It's very wide-ranging, the effects that simple things like cuts and efficiency savings, I think normally called, can have. And recently in the news here in the UK, Steve Hartshorn, the National Chair of the Police Federation of England and Wales, confronted Priti Patel, the Home Secretary at the Police Federation's annual conference a few weeks ago, and he asked Home Secretary what has gone wrong. Now, some recent statistics, they did a poll of 2,000 members of the public, which showed that 75%, three-quarters of the British public believe that the police deserve a pay rise in line with inflation, at the very least, I would say, and 79% agree that dangerous jobs like police work deserve the pay to reflect the work. Unsurprisingly, the Home Secretary didn't have any real answer to that question. So in your view, from somebody who's been there, on the front line, essentially, who has experienced those cuts and had to, I guess, in your role, work out where they're coming and be very aware of budgets and cuts and changes on that front, what has gone wrong?
You've nailed it. I'm not entirely sure whether. I agree that police, a probationary police constable gets somewhere in the region of, I think, around £21,000 a year. Yet, as soon as they're signed off to patrol on their own, they are patrolling on their own. I retired from the police in 2013. Now, I used to bang the table and moan to the chief officers all the time about the cuts that we were expected to make. And you'll remember from In Bad for Good, there's just a little aspect of that right at the beginning where Phil Cook, one of the characters, is having a row with his boss about the cuts, and the cuts sort of go throughout the whole book. But I was making a noise back in 2013 about the cuts. Now, if you were to speak to the current divisional commander in Brighton and Hove and ask him whether or not he would want to, what he would do to go back to the numbers and the level of resourcing that I was moaning about, he'd bite your hand off. Absolutely bite your hand off. It's far, far worse now. You can literally have two officers patrolling, a third of a county on a night time. Now, add to that the fact that if they detain somebody under the Mental Health Act, and there's a huge amount of that going on, a lot of people in mental health crisis out there that need to be detained to protect themselves and others, that's those two officers then watching that person, be that in a custody block or in a hospital, for the rest of their shift. You've got no one left, literally got no one left. And, in a force the size of Sussex, they're then playing sort of chess, trying to move people around the county to cover the most urgent jobs. It is absolutely dire and absolutely criminal. Even someone like myself who lives in a relatively safe area, it is quite sort of robust, emotionally and psychologically robust. I worry about it. If something were to happen in my neighbourhood, I know the chances of getting a police officer there in time to be able to deal with it are hovering just above zero.
Yeah, this is from someone who knows the inside of it as well. So hearing that is worrying, and it's not just in Sussex, is it? It's nationwide. The noises coming from the politicians are that they want to support the police, they want to give them the resources, but it seems that, if anything, cuts keep coming and there's even less support, and what's already there is being taken away further.
Just to say, the Uplift programme, which was designed to I can't remember the exact figures that were the additional police officers, merely bring the police back to sort of 2012 levels. So it's not, and I'm not making a party political point here, because I think whatever party was inherited the financial issues back in 2010 would have been doing the same thing. But the money that's now being put back into the police is just money that was taken away within the last 10 years.
Yeah, so what they're doing is taking it from dangerous to worrying again.
Yeah.
What can be done to fix it? Can it be fixed? Is it just a case of putting money back in, or is something more structural needed?
I think there are a few things. Obviously, putting money back in would help. I think there needs to be a definition of what policing is, what it's for. Policing is seen by everybody, by the community, by politicians, by all agencies other than the police, as being the service of first and last resort. If you're in a crisis, who's going to turn up? The police. So what that means is the police are turning up to all sorts of things that they really don't need to be at. They really don't need to be at. And it's somebody else's problem. I mean, if you go back to the mental health issue, if you're having a mental health crisis in the middle of Brighton town centre, for example, Brighton city centre, and the police are the ones who turn up to it because there's nobody else to come, that's just going to make things worse. However well the police treat you, if you've suddenly got police officers with kind of tasers and batons and you're seeing all that, then that's not going to do you any good. These people are sick, but it's the police that turn up, the police that have to go and support other agencies when there might be problems, support the ambulance service when there might be problems. And sometimes they'll get to a job before the ambulance service because, the paramedics are equally stretched and all over the place and, can be there for hours waiting for a paramedic to turn up because it's not safe to leave the victim there. The public service, the public sector needs to be properly defined. But by the same token, the police need to have a definition, really. What are they there to do? A former chief officer that I worked for once said that, the police should be treated very much like the health service, in they should be commissioned to do certain activities. And like the health service, like health providers, if they're not commissioned to do a particular thing, then they won't do it. It's quite brutal. It's quite difficult to implement. But if you go to hospital and your condition is not one that they are commissioned to fix, then they'll refer you on to another hospital, another provider. The police just seem to suck it all up, and therefore this contraction of resources, contraction of numbers, plus this very, very wide and undefined remit has created the issues the problem that we're in now.
Well, it's going to be interesting seeing how things go, that's for sure, to see how policing can recover. I think in the meantime, I'm going to keep away from the news and stick to reading about fictional policing because it's,
I think that's the best bet.
Frankly, less worrying and less dramatic sometimes. Well, Graham, it's been wonderful having you join me on the show this week. Hopefully you'll be back very soon as well, seeing as we'll be having to fill in while Bob's away gallivanting. Hopefully you'll join us for Partners in Crime, Arsenic and Old Lace after this as well, the very short after show. We've got quite a few things to cram in. We've got Kobo's book recommendations of the week, 2 of those to get in. Also some recommended classic thrillers and new releases that were in the London Evening Standard this week. And also I was going to ask you about your journey to publication and the things that go on behind the scenes that readers might not be aware of. So we'll squeeze all of that into our after show. If you want to view that, you need to be a Partners in Crime patron. Head over to patreon.com/Partners in Crime podcast or follow the link in the show notes. Graham, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you around these parts again very soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Partners in Crime was presented by Adam Croft and
Not the other one.
produced by Adam Croft. The theme tune was by the Caesareans. The Partners in Crime logo and imagery were designed by Stuart Bache. Partners in Crime is sponsored by Kobo, your favourite local bookshop, perfected.